I was thinking about the five major reasons why I would want to pursue my own innovative business idea as the founder of the business. And while I was thinking of that, I was conflicted by the reasons why I should just chill at my current job role and pursue innovations and creativity, which for some reason it already allows me to do. So why should I, leave what I have going on here where I can innovate and pursue those ideas even within an established organization that was not necessarily founded by me? Why should I leave that and take the risk of running my own business in an area that I'm passionate about? So then it struck me, if any kind of innovation and creativity is essentially my goal and what I'm looking for, why can't I do it while getting paid by someone else? And why can't I get paid to innovate and build someone else's dream? I don't have a problem with that if that was my goal, and if that goal was just to create, reinvent, produce, and build stuff within, the confines that I'm allowed to. If that's my dream and if that's my goal, I don't have a problem doing that. But why would I do the alternative and take the risk? So that led me to thinking and having something to discuss with us in this episode today. That's basically the whole rant that is leading to what we're discussing today. And by the way, if you're not already aware, my name is Dayton and this is Wits and Co., which is a show about leading successful careers and making your work life enjoyable so that your entire life can be fulfilling. So like we normally say on the show, we help you not just to survive through your everyday work life, but actually thrive through the most important years of your life, which is basically your career years. Put things in perspective. How many years do you spend in a career, making career decisions, and those are the bulk of the years of your life. So helping you to thrive through those years successfully. Today, I'll be introducing what I have titled here as the founder balance. We'll go through a couple of funny titles, but as long as you get your idea and the point around it. So in this episode, we'll try to draw a line between, founding your own business and working within an organization that is not owned by you. What is the differences between both? At what point does it make a huge impact? Or at what point does it make a difference in what you're trying to achieve within, both contexts? That's basically what we'll be talking about this episode. So listen on and follow along the discussion. There will be opportunities to drop your comments and your feedback on this episode, so look out for that. So workplace and work styles keep evolving and have gotten really interesting these days. I mean, sometimes you meet people and without even asking questions, what comes to your mind first is, what pays this person's bills? And at times, you get to speak with them and you don't even get a clear understanding of what is it exactly they do, because work has evolved from the conventional and the traditional understanding of career, as it were, some 20, 30, 40 years ago. And another thing is also that the workplace is comprised of multiple generations now, where different people want different things, because they're in different points of their lives, and it can actually be quite challenges for organization leaders to bring teams together in accomplishing a shared goals. Now, the differences is not necessarily in terms of demography. At times, these differences come from, our backgrounds and our understanding as humans and as individuals, which basically, frame the picture of what we want from life. So, organization leaders have that challenge of bridging the gap, to bring multiple people together to achieve, a shared objective, right? But then an understanding of these various motives, I would call it, of different people, relating to their generation or their demography or just their personalities, helps organization leaders to actually properly motivate and incentivize people. Now, this is still within the context of, people working within an organization where there is a leader. You may be the organization leader in this context, which is driving the vision and the core objectives of the organization that you set, or you may be a team member belonging to an organization where you have objectives to meet. Now, but then the focus will also be thinking about how we make decisions on when to run your own business and how to transition when that may happen for you. So historically, there are a couple of things that we know, right? Career choices were usually inspired by older parents, who were traditionalists in their beliefs, and then they were firm believers of the all, a honest day's pay for a honest day's work. That mindset. That was what we knew from older parents, parents in their 70s and 80s now. Those parents were probably lawyers and doctors, and some of them civil servants. And, their children also aspired for this kind of career goals, as well. There was some form of security with doing those kind of jobs and studying those kind of courses in school. And those things made those parents really, really proud. And, their children aspired for this. In those, generation or in that context, people were extremely loyal to their jobs, and employers were really respected for their loyalty to their jobs. That's why you find people, who have worked in places for 20, 30 years, and, they are fine with it and they get respected even for the number of years that they've committed into those jobs. And in turn, they also value job titles and, some money in order to keep their family together in one piece. So this evolved and built our younger parents' generation, probably parents in their, 50s and 60s now, who valued more work, and they also wanted to be motivated through, more responsibilities. So with this in mind, entrepreneurship, I'll use that word loosely, was somewhat frowned at as a primary source of income, right? Then you would not necessarily walk up to your parents and say, hey, I have a business and I'm quitting my job and that's supposed to pay for my, pay my bills. And they'll be like, yay. No, that wasn't the case then. It wasn't really encouraged. And also significant to notice that, then, when you're not running your own business, it was called, a 9 to 5, because it's expected you go to work at 9 and by 5 you are closed for the day, whether the job is done or not. But then the alternative was then entrepreneurship, where, you're preneuring the idea, and it wasn't like a 9 to 5 scenario. So that was what it was like then. And then, of course, the traditional sense of a 9 to 5 was you get to work, you know what you need to do, you do the job. If there's nothing to be done, well, you chill, and then, well, there's nothing to be done. And at the end of the month, you get paid your remuneration according to your contract agreement. Whereas entrepreneurship is more of a, okay, I have this idea, I need to put this idea in place, I need to make money from it, I hire people, and then I'm the one that, pay people to get the job done. That was the difference between the two then, using the word entrepreneurship and 9 to 5. So that was what was obtainable then. Now, there is a difference. And the difference where, I will start from the 9 to 5 and entrepreneurship context is that now we've come to realize that it's not necessarily a 9 to 5 versus entrepreneurship scenario, right? Because to start with, it's not necessarily valid if you are calling, a job where you get paid a 9 to 5 when you're not necessarily working 9 to 5. Hey, you could be working, 6 a.m. to 12 midnight in some cases. You could be working round the clock. And of course, where you're not, it's a blue collar job and it's not in the traditional 9 to 5 sense. You could be working shifts, which is not within the 9 to 5 time window. So also, because if you're an entrepreneur, it depends on how well you structure or manage your time or what level of business you're in. You could actually be working 9 to 5, and outside of your 9 to 5, you could be doing something else that you're interested in. So the whole 9 to 5 scenario does not necessarily differentiate where you run your business or where you're running your business, because the game has changed and you can barely tell the difference between the two by the number of hours clocked in. And secondly, you can barely tell the difference whether you're, preneuring anything or not. Reason being that in some paid employment or in some cases where you're not the business owner, you actually run some form of entrepreneurship within the context of the organization, right? Meaning that you are allowed to innovate, you're allowed to create, you're allowed to fund things, you're allowed to build things. We see situations like that with Google, where even it's part of the organization's, policy to ensure that staff commit about 20% of their time into building their own innovative ideas, meaning 20% of their work hours into building their own ideas. And those ideas could be something that Google would invest in. So in that case, you could actually be working, and then in that context, you are building a business, you are building something, you are working on something that you're passionate about. So again, the all you're building or pioneering something, let me use that word, does not necessarily also differentiate between the two, because I could be getting paid, and in the context of that contract, I am then building an idea if my organization supports it. So that's it. It also depends on your career path as well. Some career paths are actually inherently, made to have innovation and creativity and entrepreneurship as part of it, even though you are getting paid to do that job, right? So we found situations where people hire CEOs, we found situations where people hire product managers, VP of products, and the basic responsibility assigned to that job role is to create, is to build, is to scale up an idea. So in that case, you're also getting paid. It's not your business, but then you're creating something, right? So that's another way. It depends on the career path. You are allowed to then, be flexible with creativity within the context of what the organization allows you to do, right? In most cases, the control is then to ensure that, okay, whatever it is they are building is something that the organization is aware of. It ultimately contributes to the organization's goals and objectives. And you're not necessarily in a healthcare organization and you say you want to pioneer something in e-commerce. Like, you might as well do that outside of the organization's context. But then those controls are in place to make sure that you can create, you can be flexible, but then you need to do it in line with what the organizations have put in place as their objectives and their goals. So then business owners hire smart people, sell the vision to them, and then allow them to innovate and create, every other thing in between that leads to the fulfillment of that vision with the controls in place. So now looking at it then, maybe calling it a 9 to 5 as well as an entrepreneurship situation is not necessarily the right word to use. We've come to realize that now. And, both have their own perks and benefits, and both have their own disadvantages as well. So let's say we call it founding your business and not founding your business, because that's the ultimate difference between both. So now again, entrepreneurship in that traditional sense of the word is now seen as a more acceptable and recognizable source of income and livelihood. You get parents these days that when their children come up and they say, "Hey dad, I have this idea, hey mom, I have this idea," and the parents, cheer them on. And probably even I've seen situations where, children run their own ideas, or people run their own ideas even before they start being profitable. Parents still support them financially and say, "Oh, this is the ultimate goal is for you to be able to at least survive enough to run your business." So it's more encouraged now. You have situations where students graduate from the university and their parents allow them to have a year or two to figure out what you want to do with your life. Not necessarily because you studied XYZ. Just figure out what you want to do with your life. I'll still contribute and support you. And then you can decide on what you would want to do, if you want to take up a paid employment or you want to run your own business. So we have situations like that. Even where they don't get the support, people by their own choice decide to take some time off, work or before they start working, and build on something when they can, accommodate that risk. So those are things that happen now with entrepreneurship. So there's a lot more respect for people that are running their own businesses as well. Let me use the word respect in terms of traditionally, people see you as, oh, the one that is committing the time to it, the one that has nothing to fall back on, and the one that has the higher risk, to mitigate, or the one that is taking the higher risk. So there's a bit more respect for them because, let's face it, you're the whole risk taker, and you do that on your own accord, on your own business. Whether it fails, whether it succeeds, it's your business. Okay. But then there's a downside now, which is also beginning to happen now. With that in place, as more respect is accorded to entrepreneurs and founders of businesses, we also notice that people glamorize, founding your business, right? Why I say people glamorize is, it looks as if people automatically, believe that the fact that you're founding your business, it translates to a better life and a better career outcome. Again, I'm using the word career loosely because the word better loosely, because better could actually mean different things to different people, right? So there's a traditional sense of belief that the fact that my name is on the door, well, I'm a lot better. I'm farther ahead of you in life. I stand the chance of, getting things done better and faster. So as long as my name is on the door and as long as my name is on the papers, well, you're getting paid and you're doing something else for building someone else's dream. So I'm way better than you. So whether the business is profitable or successful or not, we've come to glamorize entrepreneurship and the pain that goes into it as if that's all that matters. And that's a huge mistake I think we're making in our generation. Before I proceed into the other, downsides and the other misconceptions that we have about funding your business and not funding your business in this day and age, let's take a couple of minutes for a break and then we'll come back to it. Welcome back. So leading from the previous point, there was this saying making rounds on social media a couple of weeks back, and it goes like this: your salary is the price they pay you to forget about your dreams. Something like that, or something in that line of thoughts. And of course, a lot of people came up and had opinions and said different things, and had their say on that quote in terms of how true it is or how untrue it is. And of course, I have my opinion, and I would say it depends on what side of the spectrum you are, and how extreme you think, in terms of when to fulfill your dreams or not. So this is what I'm saying. So I don't necessarily think your salary is the price they pay you to forget your dream, but then I believe your salary could look like what they pay you or what you're being paid to forget about your dreams. I don't necessarily think that there is any value that can be put on the cost of your dreams that is worth, forgetting about it. Unless you've decided on your own that it's not worth pursuing, and that's not necessarily because of a salary. I also think that it's still in the same vein or the same line of glamorizing entrepreneurship, as if, as long as you pursue your entrepreneurial idea or your business innovative idea, that's the most important thing. Every other thing that happens afterwards or within it is irrelevant as long as you're the business owner. So I believe your salary could look like what you're being paid to forget about your dream, because it means that you could live your dreams a little later if you have paid employment where you have to work and deliver on stuff. It means you could live your dreams a little bit later. It doesn't mean that is bad. It just means that is that. It could take you a while longer to fulfill your dreams if you have to get paid before that. But then it also means that you could get a lot of things in the process of getting paid your salary that would propel your dream, that you can leverage on to fulfill your dreams faster. Meaning that even if you get it done later, you could leverage on so many things that could skyrocket your potential and your skill and get you to where you want to be eventually. So it's not a binary of if you do this then you cannot get that. It's not necessarily a binary. It's as much as how you take advantage of the opportunities that come your way, irrespective of whether you're in a paid employment or irrespective of whether you're the business owner. Whatever opportunities you have, whatever decisions you make, how best you make use of those opportunities and how best you make those decisions is what ultimately matters, as long as you keep your goals in sight. So yeah, I think that rounds off the point about glamorizing entrepreneurship and side eyeing or shading people that are in paid employment when they are not the business owners. Like, I don't really see the need for it. I think every man's journey is different. Everybody's path is different, and respect everybody's hustle, whatever it is they're doing, because guess what? You're not in it and you don't understand what is going on in there, and it is not your dream. So, face your dream. Yeah. So that's that. Still similar to that point too. Having a job where you're paid, where you're not the business owner, can give a false sense of security in some cases, and it can also not give a sense of security. So let me put it this way: it can give a false sense of security where well, whatever I do, I get paid at the end of the day, and even if it's an organization where corporate governance is very firm, it means that worst case scenario, I'll be on a performance improvement plan for about 3 months before I figure out my way and get out of here. So it gives a false sense of security that, okay, at least I have something to fall back on. I can't just get chopped out of a system and get paid. But then it may also give a false sense of security where, you're working in a place where maybe corporate governance is not in place. And, if the business is not profitable, well, you may not have a reason to be at that organization. If, technology evolves and your job role gets replaced, then there is no need to have you there anymore. And it won't be a merciful process in many instances. Like your services are no longer needed, your services are no longer needed. So it can swing both ways as well. Being a paid employment where you're not the business owner can give a false sense of security. And it could also not give a sense of security, meaning that I could be out of here mercilessly at any point in time. It depends on where you're working. It depends on what is, at play in your place of organization. The next thing I would like to touch on is how, technology has made it a bit easier for you to build your own thing and, fully or part-time as you're working, right? We have, platforms like Upwork, platforms like Fiverr, where skills are on demand. So many skills are on demand. And then this platform makes it possible for the demand and supply of those skills to meet and transact. So you don't necessarily have to establish the whole, cycle of marketing, the whole cycle of sales. As long as you have a skill, as long as you have an idea, what you need to do is put your idea on these platforms, and then the demand and supply comes to play there. So it means that if you have an idea, if you're creative, if you are entrepreneurial and you want to run your own business, then it makes it a lot easier because they cater for the sales and marketing part of this. All you need to do is have your skills, have your pricing in place, and have the time to get the job done. And then you technically can get the job done. Now, the extent of how creative you can get with that is also a bit, questionable, meaning that you can only provide services in the context of what a user wants, right? It's not also 100%. You go to town and build whatever you think the whole world needs. It has to be a supply and demand situation, in place there. So they make it easier for you to actually have, have your cake and eat your cake and have it. Also, the internet boom and exposure that we are experiencing now is also very significant to people getting a better understanding of the problems they can solve, right? The world is a global village. You can literally sit in the comfort of your home and deliver services globally and solve a problem for Asians and solve a problem for Africans. I mean, Facebook solved the problem, right? And we are consuming that product here in Africa. Google is solving a problem and is being consumed globally. They don't necessarily need to have a brick and mortar office. As long as your idea is sellable and there's a demand for that idea, you can literally sit in the comfort of your home and boom, you're in business. So it makes it a bit easier as well. And then, of course, you don't have to then think of the whole capital of setting up a physical office, setting up a sales team, setting up everything can be done online now, and it reduces the cost of the initial capital and setup cost for your own business hugely. Like you could literally be chilling and people wonder what you're doing, which begs the question when I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the episode that you see some people and you wonder, what does this guy do for a living? When he explains to you, you really don't even get it. And you're like, well, that's what the world is right now. And you're not going to question anybody's hustle. So ultimately, you have the freedom, to make the important business decisions when you own the business, right? Which is true. We are not taking that away. But then the outcome of those decisions are what's important to how the business survive, and that's what matters. Forget what anybody thinks about, oh, I'm the CEO, I'm the owner, and forget what anybody thinks about, oh, what are you doing, you're getting paid. The most important thing is the various choices and the decisions you make along the line, and what is important to you as a person. What are your goals? Some people's goals are actually to contribute their quota in developing other organizations. Well, as long as that's what the person wants, whatever decision they make to achieve that goal,
as long as that is, then that's it. Nobody necessarily, there's no benchmark to judge everybody by. There's no one size fit all standard to judge everybody by. While owning your own business can be fulfilling in its own right, it can also be frustrating in its own right. And while building your own business and working within an organization context can be fulfilling, it can also be frustrating in its own right, right? Where you own your business, it's never ending. It's a never stopping cycle. You keep working, working, working to get stuff done, to fulfill your goals. Of course, the risks are higher, and there's a lot of compromise you have to make, a lot of comfort you have to sacrifice to be successful. And let's not lie, let's not get it twisted. The climb is really hard and really high to attain success, especially in several difficult markets like Africa or in Nigeria. The climb is really high and hard, so you need to give it the work it requires. Where you do not own the business, at some point, especially when you have the entrepreneurial drive and you have the creativity and the passion to do stuff, sometimes that lack of satisfaction comes to play in you. Even it affects your work, right? Because you realize that, I could be doing this job to get paid and to pay my bills, and I could be doing this job and I'm maybe a little bit satisfied, but at some point there's that tendency to feel the need to actually do a little bit more, and that's a downside to not doing work in the context of your owned business. And then both have their rewards, right? Where you own the business, you decide on the direction of the business and the direction you think it requires for growth. Even though in the long run, how much decision and how much control you have will be, reduced, because again, where corporate organization or corporate governance is in place, you have board of directors and shareholders that have a say in how you run the business you established. So at that point, you seem to probably be working for the directors and the shareholders. So it's not an ever-ending cycle of, now I own the business, I decide what happens. Unless you want to be doing a one-man show and you don't want to establish a formidable and sustainable business, that's when you actually just run the decisions by yourself, and the growth will be questionable in that case. So where you have the joy of making the decisions, the most important decisions, at some point you have to share that decision making burden with board members and shareholders. So that also happens. And then there's the joy in seeing your idea come to fruition, your ideas come to life, especially when you're getting paid for it. Like, you can't take that away, and you cannot deny the joy that brings. Where you do not own the business, you see it as an opportunity to leverage on resources, to leverage on the connect and the network to, pivot to where you should be when you eventually decide to transition. So I think those are the main things around, the downsides, the ups and the downs to owning your business and not owning your business. There's not necessarily a good or bad option. It's more about what is right for me, for my life, for my goals at this point in time. And that's how I think people should make the decisions about it. And people should regard other people where, that discussion comes to play. It's not a one size fits all. It's contextual, it's individual, and it's personal. So I asked myself a question at the beginning of this episode, which was, why would I want to pursue my own innovative ideas as a founder? And, why would I want to take the risk of leaving what I have going on now? And I think, thinking through all this, I've come to answer that question, right? I have about 5 reasons as I asked myself of why I would want to do that. And I could share those reasons with you. And so the answer would be this. So the first thing is, I am extremely passionate about the problem I'm trying to solve, right? And guess what? Nobody is solving that problem yet the way I think it will be solved. That's the first reason. I see a problem, I want to solve that problem, and guess what? Nobody does it that way yet. Now, the problem may be solved, but I may be bringing some creativity to how that problem is being solved in the society, and it can change the game. And that is the primary reason why I would pursue my own innovative idea and, my business. Secondly,
there has to be a demand for the problem that I'm trying to solve, right? There has to be a demand for what I want to sell. So that means I see a potential revenue beyond what I currently earn in pursuing that idea in the long run. So meaning if there's a demand, that means there must be somebody that is willing to pay for what I'm offering. I'm not just not going to quit my job right now and say, oh, because I'm extremely passionate about something, then I go and pursue. I'm sorry, but I believe that you have to also be able to figure out if you're this passionate about it, then you need to turn it into a business, which is basically profit and numbers. So there has to be a demand for what you're trying to sell, and you need to see the potential for revenue. I mean, along the way, we figure these things out, but you need to see the potential for revenue. Where you say you pursue your idea without thinking about the money, I strongly disagree with that. You may not necessarily see the revenue now, but then there is a potential for growth in the future, and that is ultimately right. We are running a business, it's no joke, right? The third reason why I would want to pursue that is the sense of pride and satisfaction that comes from knowing that I took the risk, irrespective of the reward. It seems like a bragging right. So it's given that you need to consider the revenue factor here, but then beyond the revenue factor, there's also the sense of satisfaction and pride, seeing that problem solved and knowing that I contributed my quota to seeing this problem solved, right? So that helps to improve your confidence and your whole morale as a person, right? So another thing is, at this point in time, young people are open to taking risks, which I am open to taking risks. Where does the road lead? And decide, okay, why not now? If not now, you have the time, you probably have the luxury, and you probably have done some work in the past which justifies why you can take this leap right now. And then that's another reason why. Why not now, if not now? Right. And the last thing is out of curiosity. You may never know the choice of the alternative. You never know the choice of the alternative unless you take it, right? Having worked for a number of years in businesses that are not necessarily yours directly, you never know what the cost of, pursuing your own idea is unless you do it. So that curiosity in and of itself is enough to drive you to say, why don't I try this? Where does this road lead? What could possibly be here? And then that curiosity alone. Now, if you satisfy that curiosity and however it goes, well, that's good enough for you. It wasn't like you never tried. So those are five major reasons why I would actually want to pursue, the idea. And the honest truth is this: successful businesses don't happen overnight. So most times we only see the finished product and hear of the story of a very successful entrepreneur, right? Guess what? We don't even hear the successes of everybody, because if for one successful entrepreneur, imagine the number of failed entrepreneurs that we have, right? For one, exemplary worker within an organization, imagine the number of failed workers within the organization. So we hear of the successes of entrepreneurs, and probably that's what drives many of us to say, oh, it's a glamorous life out there being an entrepreneur. No, we don't hear of the blood, the sweat, and the tears that it took them to wherever they are before we heard of that. It's a lot that goes into it. So it takes a lot of planning to, get an idea from the ground and turn it into a profitable business. But once it gets done, it can actually be very rewarding financially, psychologically, emotionally, mentally. It could be rewarding, and it takes a lot of hard work to get that done. So to round up the conversation, there are four things I would like to say to note and summarize all the points. And the first being that for creativity and innovation in your career, you need to, figure out what you want. You need to define your goals. What is success to you? What does that look like in the context of your personal life, your goals, your morals, and your values? What exactly it is you want out of life? I think that is the first step to understanding, to achieving success with your career, whether with within your business or outside of your business. So the first thing is figure out what you want. The second thing is also
I feel you need to explore and be sure before you go into your own business, right? Explore. If you have the opportunity, spend some time to create within paid employment, even when it's not your business, right? As a keynote, I think you should make it a point of duty that whatever responsibility and role that you're assigned to within your organization, see it as a mini business for you. See yourself as the mini CEO of that responsibility. Innovate that responsibility to the T. Create it to the core. Reinvent it like no one does. Do the task assigned to you the only way you can. Someone else should not be able to pick up that responsibility and replicate it the way you've done it. I was watching a video on LinkedIn. It was posted on LinkedIn a couple of weeks back, and this guy was tying shoelaces, and I think he tied the shoelace about 32 different ways. A tennis shoelace, he tied it about 32 different ways. I mean, I tie my tennises in maybe two different ways, and I stick to one, and I just put my feet in it, and every day I just tighten it, and that's all. But he tightened his tennis laces 32 different ways, and the basic point was that you can always adopt creativity into everything you do. You can form a mini business out of everything you do, as long as you don't treat it as an everyday, status quo. So I think it's essential to, if you can, within a paid employment, innovate and create with everything there. But be sure before you launch out into it. So try out so many things and figure out what sticks, right? You may want to run your own business, but then you don't necessarily have an idea of what exactly is your thing. So you need to actually be able to try and fail at many things before you figure out, what is your thing and what sticks to you. That way, you have so much experience even with the failed opportunities, right? So, I mean, some of us got into what we're finding now. They happen to us, right? And some of us made those conscious decisions and said, this is what I want to do. So, whichever one applies to you, try out so many things. Even if you're sure of what you want to do, at times it's necessary to try out the alternative and to try out the other options to be sure that I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, I'm sure of this. So, you need to do that I think it's important. The third thing is also, you will never get things done unless you take this smart leap of faith, right? So I said smart and I said faith, right? It's smart because one, you need to be taking calculated risks. Even though you're sure that this opportunity, the business opportunity is what's best for you, you need to think of, is what is best for me at this time? Can I do it differently? Or if I do it now, what do I stand to lose against if I do it next year? So you need to think of things in that regard. Think of, the alternative you are foregoing for whatever choice you make right now. The choices you have could be taking on a new job role somewhere and pursuing your entrepreneurial idea. You need to be able to think of it in terms of, what is the alternative that I forego if I take up this job role, and what's the alternative I forego if I, pursue my ideas or my dreams. Guess what? It's not always the best, at every point in time to say, oh, pursue your idea, definitely, because times change. So many factors go into it. So you need to actually be able to, scale your opportunities and know what the cost of each opportunity is. With that, then you can be sure to be making the best decision for you with all the information you have at this time, right? And then when that time is, when you need to switch over, whatever point you're in. People switch over from entrepreneurial ideas into, going back into paid employment because, yeah, it was the right time to get that done. And people switch over from paid employment to entrepreneurial ideas because it's the right time to get that done. So you need to know what time, it is to get anything done. Don't be compelled by societal standards of what success looks like or what people are doing now, which is in vogue. Nobody's going to, go through the crap with you if things get really crappy, right? So the last thing, which is the fourth point, is which not many people like, is your exit plan, right? Whatever I'm doing, I always think of a worst case scenario. What's the worst case scenario, and how do I get out of this situation? I mean, how do I get out of this bad deal, or do I get out of this deal good, such that I get out of it and I'm still good. I haven't suffered any losses. So you need to always think of an exit plan when you're going to an organization as to start a new job role.
I think you need to think of at what point do I need to call it quits here? How many years do I have to spend here? How long do I have to stay here and get my work done here? So with your entrepreneurial idea, you need to also set some goals for yourself, which may look like your exit plan. At what point do I need to hire someone to take over this? At what point do I need to decide that this is not working for me? So you need to think of an exit plan. Some people may think, oh, an exit plan means that you're already assuming you're going to fail. Well, not necessarily. I don't believe that. But then I always use the insurance analogy, right? I'm not paying an insurance premium on my car because I hope to get into an accident tomorrow, right? It's just life happens, and then you want to be sure that at the point where life is happening to you, you're not making an emotional decision. You already made that decision way ahead of when life is happening, if life happens. So if anything goes down, you already know that, oh, I already decided this months back or years back, such that if things go down this way, then this is what I'm going to do. So at that point, it's no longer an emotional decision. It was a well thought out decision that you're just bringing out of your bag, the way your insurance works, right? It's not a spiritual matter. It's just hedging your risk, which I think everybody should learn to do, right? So in short and summarily, remember that the goal is not necessarily the title or the money or the status to the society. The goal is what you define as the goal and what is important to you. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation. You need to ask yourself why you want to do what you're doing, and those answers will eventually lead you to the choices that you make in between. I hope this was very helpful for you, and you can always reach out to us at info@withm.co, and then remember that we're here to help you to survive everyday work life. Not just survive everyday work life, but thrive through the most important years of your life, which are your career legs. So subscribe to Wits & Co on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Anchor FM, and on TuneIn, and anywhere else you may be listening to us. And I will see you in the next episode.